The Matrix Reloaded, the first out of the two sequels that were shot back to back. The other one being, of course, The Matrix Revolutions. Both movies were released in the span of just a couple of months, 4 years after the premiere of the original film. Same cast, same universe, of course. This time around, Neo is already established as the chosen one who has the power to stop the war between humanity and the machines. Story revolves around him trying to achieve that by following the advice given to him by the Oracle, which brings him in contact with various rogue programs, some malevolent, some indifferent to his quest. All the while he's on a clock, because outside of the Matrix, Sentinels are rapidly approaching the human city of Zion with the express purpose of destroying it completely. And speaking of rogue programs, this is exactly what Agent Smith becomes, appearing in multiple bodies now, chasing after Neo, trying to break free even more than he already has. So the sequels of The Matrix are often considered on a much lower level than the original film, and I think there is a good reason for that. And I think it all boils down to one main thing: balance. See, the original Matrix was an almost perfectly balanced mix of an interesting premise, philosophy, mind-bending concepts, and action. Reloaded shifts that balance quite heavily onto the side of action. The action sequences are now more bombastic, longer, bigger scale, bigger stakes, and it doesn't necessarily help the film. First of all, there is a lot more CGI involved, and because it's used far more liberally, it is also more visible, and that means that the scenes with it have aged much quicker. I mean, there are some scenes which looked impressive back in the day, but now are pretty much laughable, like the courtyard fight against multiple Smiths. There are sections of that fight, where both Keanu and Hugo Weaving are clearly entirely CG, and they just look like a PlayStation cutscene. It's just not real at all. And because Neo has more superpowers now, there's less, actually great physical choreographed kung fu, and more flying, jumping around, smashing buildings, smashing each other with lampposts and so on. So it's less impressive in that regard as well. That's not to say it all sucks. On the contrary, some of it is still quite exciting, and the whole freeway sequence, for instance, for which they built a couple of miles of actual roads specifically for the movie, is damn impressive in its own right. But it's lacking that same effect of, shit, we've never seen this before, that the original had. I think this problem kind of extends to the more philosophical side as well. Since we now know what the Matrix is, the new revelations with the programs, the various previous iterations, the actual role of the one in the system are just not as jaw-dropping. It's more like, alright, it's cool. And that, I think, is a good summary of the movie as a whole. It's not bad by any means. It still is a very competent action film set in a really interesting world. It has flaws, too much focus on CGI-heavy action, which has inevitably aged, some writing problems here and there, slight pacing issues, but it's still enjoyable. But at the end of the day, it is a sequel, so it's kind of impossible to assess it in a vacuum. I will compare it to the original film. And where The Matrix was like, holy shit, what a movie type reaction, Reloaded is definitely just, alright, that's cool.